needy? Okay. Let's talk about how we're designed as human beings, how the Creator designed us. We all have needs. We have a need to be loved, we have a need to be connected, and we have a need to be worthy. So today we're going to combine a couple people's work, Jeff Van Vonderen, who is an interventionist, and Dr. Cloud, who wrote Boundaries, and with Dr. Townsend. So we're going to combine a couple of those things, but let's start with neediness. As a human, when we start with neediness, I need we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So we start here with food, shelter, companionship, and then we get up here to awareness and self-actualization. So those are basic needs of a human, and we have to start with these basic needs because without these, we can't move up. We will spend all our time looking for these. So I, as a human, am no less needy than any other human. And Jeff uses a great example of I just don't look as needy in some areas. The folks in Africa who are impoverished and don't have food need food just as much as I need food. So sometimes people don't look needy, but we are all needy, and needy is neither good nor bad. We all, as Maslow explained, all have basic needs that need to be provided for. So when we talk to other people, other families of addicted loved ones, people who have come through it, it's not that they don't need, it is they have had some relationships that have met those, just like in the United States and most of the Western world a lot of us do not need food, clothing, and shelter. We have that. We can say that need has been met, but given a different circumstance, a flood, a fire, or something like that, we would be put back into that situation of needing those things. So all human beings are needy. We are all meant for connection. We are all meant for love, and we are all worthy. And we'll talk more about how we were made worthy in the next one. But let's start from this basic concept that all of us need and are needy. No one person is more needy than another. The addict is not any more needy than the person who is going to work, has a family, and is providing. There's nothing different about that. And they could be the same person. What's happening is, are we developing relationships that get our needs met? Are we moving into connection? I'm Tanya. I coach families who have addicted loved ones who are coming into sobriety and need to shift and develop the kind of family relationships that make them whole and healthy. And one major concept is the opposite of addiction is connection. So if we come from a place that nobody is more needy than anybody else, but just like living in a third world country rather than a first world country, some people have more needs met by relationship connection and actual development than others. So we're all needy. So if we start from that point, then we talk about how that comes into boundaries. So if we're all needy, we all come from that basic premise. At some point, we look at you are not me. I am not you. So when we talk about boundaries, let's look at this real quick. I've drawn a boundary with this triangle. This board has a boundary that keeps it from being part of the wall. And one of the biggest ways to think about our boundaries as a human, and comes from Dr. Cloud and Townsend's work, is our skin. Think about our skin. If our skin wasn't here, we would have blood and bones and all that stuff hanging out everywhere. You've seen it when you've had an accident, when that elbow sticks out, if there's an accident, or if you break something. Or here's one that really really strikes me is when the skin breaks, you've got a fission. And the first thing that happens is it tries to close that boundary. Your body is really good at closing that boundary. If it doesn't close that boundary, what do? We go to the hospital, right? If we don't close that boundary, if we don't take that cut and fix it, what can happen? It can get an infection. If it gets an infection, we've got a boundary invasion. Once that boundary invasion happens, then we often need some help. There we are, being needy again. We often need some help. And we don't walk around going, okay, can you look at this and just tell me it's okay? No, we go to a professional. We get some help. We go to a doctor. We go to a nurse. We go to something like that. Same thing with your family. When your family is dealing with a loved one with addiction, you need some help. When your family is recovering with a loved one with addiction, you need some help because an infection has invaded your boundaries. You're trying to figure out, how do I become healthy again? So inside that infection boundary, there's multiple ways to do it. You're not just going to put your arm over here and say, oh, it'll take care of itself. It'll just be fine. Occasionally. But normally there needs to be some draining, some letting out, some awareness, some clarity, and that boundary needs to be closed up. So that's an example of boundaries, is keeping that blood in there and keeping it closed. Even further is when there's a cancer. So if there's a cancer, then it's not even sometimes visible. And think about that in your life, about neediness, addiction, going to the external to solve problems rather than creating connection and relationship. So what happens when good boundaries are not there? We talked about that yesterday. What's a boundaryless life like? That is where you lose freedom of choices. I don't have freedom over my life anymore because I'm not willing to set boundaries. I'm not willing to say no. If I am being nice all the time and saying yes, then when I need time to recover, when I need time for myself, when I need time to do my work, I've already overcommitted and I don't have any boundaries. I have a boundaryless life. Let me show you this is a bizarre example. So when there's a tense conversation in my family, instead of speaking up, I go immediately to the cabinets to open and see what's in there. And here's what I think I'm doing. This is a really interesting thing. So by putting these in my mouth, I'm doing this, right? I think I am saving everybody around me from my wrath and my anger. I am not speaking because I'm chewing. What I'm actually doing is putting a layer between me and the other people. And what I'm doing is I am being boundaryless. I am not saying, hey, I'm too tired. Can we talk about this another time? I haven't formulated my opinion, or right now I can't do this. Instead, I am stuffing instead of creating a healthy boundary that says, my needs are not being met in this situation. I'm not even sure what they are right now, but instead of that, I am going to do a compulsive, listen to that. I'm going to do a compulsive behavior. This behavior, now we all need food, but I am fully fed, completely comfortable with my eating schedule, habit, but this is my stress management. It could also be an addictive behavior, but it's at least an obsessive compulsive behavior that when I can't deal with my emotions or with your emotions, I'm going to do this. Now my mouth is dry. Who can relate? How absurd is it for me to deal with my emotions by putting food in my mouth? It's just absurd. And I believe that I am protecting the people that are trying to have this very tense conversation with me. What I realized after a lot of work and coaching was I was checking out and not being present. I couldn't feel my body. I didn't know what was going on, and I was checking out and not being present. Now, as a more aware person, I will say, I'm feeling overwhelmed, setting part of a boundary. Can we talk about this later? The actual action in there. So I'm having awareness, and then I'm acknowledging it, and then I'm asking for action. So those three steps are something that you need to incorporate in and create boundaries. So this ritualistic compulsive food eating is keeping me in a boundaryless life.